Welcome to the Becoming Superhuman podcast, where we interview extraordinary people to bring you the skills and strategies to overcome the impossible. And now, here's your host, Jonathan Levy.
Greetings, SuperFriends, and welcome to this week's episode. You guys, amazing review here by Fidget from the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, who says, 5 stars, life-changing, inspiring, informative, and stuffed with actionable tips and everyday strategies for being a better you. Thanks to this podcast, I eat healthier, move more often, have better relationships, and more money in my bank account. Genuinely life-changing. Well, first off, wow. Thank you very, very much, Fidget. I really, really appreciate that review. And I'm really glad to hear you say that, because one of the things that we have been playing around, and I kind of revealed it accidentally in this episode, is we are playing around with the idea of doing a monthly MasterMind, monthly challenge, where we have a past guest come in from the show. And instead of spending a week and kind of hitting you guys with a new challenge every week, like meditation, improving sleep, improving diet, intermittent fasting, we actually go deep as a group. And we really experiment with this stuff, and we really try it out together. I will be along with you guys for the journey, applying my learning frameworks and helping you guys digest and learn. You will have community. And then we want to give away a lot of other great stuff with it. I mean, shipping people gear, equipment, books every single month, giving people unlimited access to all of our premium library of courses, and a ton of other stuff. So I would love to hear what you guys have to say about this idea. Are you interested? Are you not interested? Is this something that you could see yourselves signing up for at $149 a month or more? And if so, what are the things that you would want to see? I'm really passionate about this idea because I think, first off, our courses go for $95 a month anyway, so this is a huge win. But also, I'm excited to go deep with some of these experts, have them come into a Facebook group, do Facebook Lives, do all kinds of different activities with us, and help us actually implement the stuff that we're talking about every single week. So if you guys are interested in that, I would really love if you would send me a tweet on Twitter to @GoSuperhuman or my personal Twitter @entrepreneur. Take a quick moment. You can also email us to info@becomingassuperhuman.com and let us know if you are interested in such a crazy idea. We might have already released it by the time this podcast episode comes out, but I just wanted to hear what you guys have to say about it. All right, on to today's episode. You guys, today we are joined by my fellow immigrant here in Israel, Dov Gordon. He is a coach of coaches, and he helps coaches, consultants, and experts get their ideal clients consistently. Why talk to a business coach that coaches other business coaches? Well, because Dov coaches other coaches and is the leader of a massive mastermind that I've met a number of very high-level people through, he has a unique insight about how progress, change, and improvement are made in our lives. And I wanted to have him on the show to get a feel for how he implements change, not just with his clients, but in his own life. I wanted to understand some of the different ways that we go about. And I think Dov has a very unique perspective. You will hear him talk about, striking at the roots and not at the leaves. He has a really, really interesting perspective, and a lot of interesting stuff came out throughout this episode about just the way that we make change in our lives, the things that we think we want, but maybe are not fully what we want, the things that we convince ourselves that we want, which are not at all what we want, and other interesting and enjoyable insights. So I'm sure you guys will enjoy my episode with my new super friend, Mr. Dov Gordon. Mr. Dov Gordon, welcome. How are you, my friend?
Great. It's great to be here, Jonathan.
Yeah, really good to speak with you again since our last meeting.
Absolutely, which was a real pleasure, and we have to repeat that now that you're back home.
We do, yeah. And for those in the audience who are wondering what meeting, we had a mastermind of sorts, which was, we owe Charles Bird for that, where we got together, you, myself, Ofer Breyer, Stephen Spencer, and a bunch of just thought leaders and experts and coaches, and was really lovely. Orion was also there, which was really cool. So thank you, Charles Bird, for that.
That's right. You mentioned you're part of the Genius Network often, and I've created my own little Genius Network, although I don't charge what Joe Polish charges. Mine is free. But it's been a big factor in growing my business. But that's what happened. I mean, I don't know where Charles met you, but Charles knows me because he's been in my group for a couple of years. We have about 160, 170 people around the world. And he's just a thoughtful guy. Sent about 10 of us an email saying, hey, you're all in Israel, at least right now. You guys should get together. And that's what we did. And it was a great meeting. It's always good to get together with good, smart, generous people.
Absolutely. And if people in the audience are wondering, how do they know if they're a good fit for this group or not?
For my group?
Yeah.
Well, our group is primarily it is others who are marketing to consultants, coaches, experts, entrepreneurs, and so on, using the internet for the most part, and who are open to joint ventures. I mean, my group, I call it very creatively titled the Joint Venture Marketing Mastermind, JVMM. And it's something I started about 9 years ago. And we started with about a handful of people who I'd met online who were open to using the internet to promote others and looking to be promoted. And that's how we grow our lists and expand our audience, and that's necessary for a business. So that's the short version of it. I'm always looking for good people, but generally these days it comes through recommendation. We're usually we'll find you, or you'll find us through someone that knows you.
I love it. So I'm going to backpedal because I realized I always say that I don't like to research guests too much before, because this exact thing happens. I assume the audience knows who the heck I'm talking to. So tell us who Dov Gordon is and what you do and how you got into doing what you do. Okay.
Who am I, right? I was listening to something, and that was the question, right? I forgot which book it is. I listened to so many different books or read. I'm in the middle of too many books. Can't remember which one it was. Like, who are you? How do you answer that question? Not so simple. Anyway, so who I am. I mean, I'm just a guy who I've got some really good skills that are valuable to certain kinds of people. I'm out there every day trying to offer those skills, doing some stuff for free, and then working with some paid clients, specifically working with consultants, coaches, experts, professional service firms to help them get their ideal clients consistently. Let's see. I mean, I discovered the self-help and business sections in the library when I was 13, maybe 13. And that's where I read my first self-help book. It was $1 Million Habits by Robert Ringer. Do you ever read that? Ever read Robert Ringer?
No, I haven't actually heard of it.
He wrote a book called Looking Out for Number One, I think, and Winning Through Intimidation, which was later released under different titles. And it was a number one New York Times bestseller. I think it was re-released years later with a different title because the idea of winning through intimidation was not understood when just a headline, although it got into number one New York Times. I don't know what the issue was, but a very entertaining writer. And then from there, I just, I have a natural sense or ability to be able to coach people to understand. I mean, I studied many different aspects of business, management, marketing, sales, and so on. But for years, I had a mentor who probably 10, 12, 13 years ago, maybe more by now, he said, Dov, you've got a lot of talent, but you need skills. And that kind of hit me over the head because I suddenly realized a big part of why I'd been struggling for so long, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Back in about 2000, I got married. 2001, I started this coaching business. No real idea what I was doing, having never held a real job before, never really worked in a business.
You and me both.
Yeah, okay. I'm glad I'm not alone. I'm in good company. But I just had this sense. I just knew that I could do this, but I didn't really know where to start. I didn't know how to package up my expertise in a way that would make it saleable to others. And the first 7-8 years were a real slog uphill, really learning as I'm doing, investing a fair amount of money with various different coaching programs or different mentor here and there. And eventually learning certain things, getting to the point where I really started to understand what I was missing. I'd say that one of the things that I'm good at, I might be preempting one of your questions, if that's okay, but it's really taking a beating and then learning the essence of the lesson and distilling it down to the key, striking at the root where the masses are hacking at the leaves, and then be able to teach that to others to kind of shortcut their own learning. That's something that I've been able to do.
I love that. It's kind of like first principles thinking. Tell me some of the big lessons along the way that turned things around when you were struggling in your business. What are some of the life lessons you learned? And I love that your mentor said, like, you have talent, you need skills. What are the skills that you had to take a beating over the head and learn?
I know that your audience is not necessarily entrepreneurs, not necessarily business owners, but you can probably relate anyway to some degree. So I'm going to connect to that. But, there's so much marketing and sales information out there. Like, if you are an expert or a consultant or a coach or you got a professional service and you're looking for help on how to get clients, I mean, there's a line of experts around the block, everybody saying, do this, do that, and do the other thing. And at some point, they all start to sound the same. And the problem is that if you're really good at what you do, and there are a lot of people perhaps in the audience who want to go out on their own, they struggle to or they tried to and they couldn't quite make it work. We do have many of our clients fit that profile. And they're overwhelmed with what everybody says you have to do. And honestly, what we're talking about is true in just about any area. I mean, we're all overwhelmed with all the different things that we have to do to achieve whatever it is that we're trying to achieve. And, the superhuman aspect is actually not being so superhuman. It's about just doing what most people don't do, which is really getting clear about priorities and focusing on the few things. So I really had to learn that as it relates to how do I get in front of my ideal client and connect with them instantly. And what I realized is everybody out there is saying, okay, this one says Facebook, you got to use Facebook or Twitter or blogging. Blogging was big once upon a time, or podcasts, right? Podcasts are big now. And there's so many tactics because of modern technology. And I noticed one day in deep frustration, all of these tactics could work and all of them could fail. So it can be that I have to do this and I have to do that and I have to do that and that and that. I need to ask a different question. I need to say, well, if they can all work and they can all fail, then why do they work when they work and why do they fail when they fail? Because if I can understand that, then I can pick one and make that one work for me consistently. And most of us don't need more than that. If you're looking to build a really large company or moderately large company and brand, as you grow, you want to add, perhaps additional capabilities and on-ramps and outlets for your content and so on. But when you're getting started or if you're small, you just get to be really good at one thing and get in front of your ideal clients with that one thing and lead them to want to have a sales conversation with you. And some of them will become clients. So that was a really important insight, is if you can understand why it works when it works, why it fails when it fails, that gives you power to avoid all the shiny objects and all the distractions.
It's kind of like in Good to Great when Jim Collins talks about the hedgehog concept, is like figuring out what you do. And it's a business principle, but I think it applies. I'm learning in my personal life as well, is like, yes, I can write great sales copy and emails, and I can edit podcasts, and I can even edit videos, and I can do all these different things in my job. But where I really excel is in designing learning experiences and in writing great content and, everything else, even hiring now in our business. I'm not the best person anymore in our business at hiring. Other people in my company are way better at hiring than I am. And learning that, I think, is a life lesson. There are things that I'm just going to suck at, and I need to be okay with that. And I need to just let that be and focus on one strategy that I'm really damn good at.
Absolutely. Yeah.
How has that played out in your life? I mean, what are the things that you're focused on that you've had to do at the expense of other things that you've let go?
Well, I have a small team. You've got a couple of people who are here. I have a support coach who I've had to learn over time that, to let her do what she could do. And that's taken a big load off of me. I have somebody who does a lot of the back end, some of the things behind the scenes, whether it's marketing or operational things. And I had to learn to let go of some of that. I think that the same concept applies, though, when it comes to the market that you want to serve. And that's a place where a lot of people struggle, because I don't know if it's true. I imagine it's true for you, but I think it's true for all of us who have businesses. We really want to sell to or serve more people than we possibly could. And that's something that I struggle with, something I've been struggling with for the last couple of years. And right now, I'm kind of on the cusp of making a decision to narrow my marketing focus further. Part of me knows that it really could and should work, meaning it'll enable me to stand out within a group of people that I've had a lot of success with helping. But the other part of me is scared, right? Because I've got all these other people that we've done great work with who don't fit that profile. Now, if I was my own client, I would tell myself to do the damn thing because I know all the advantages. But when you're in it yourself, it's hard. And that's why our clients need us. And that's why we all need some help. Would you agree?
Yeah, I actually wanted to ask you, I mean, before we chatted about what we wanted to chat about, one of the things I wanted to ask you about was just coaching as a whole, right? Because I've had mentors, and I've talked about this a little bit on the show before, but I've had mentors before. I've only recently started hiring coaches, and it's been a really eye-opening and valuable process for me. And as someone who coaches, I think you're in a unique and interesting vantage point to explain the value of having a coach versus having a mentor, and what are the things that coaches offer as a whole that people can benefit, whether that's a business coach or that's a training coach or that's a, therapist, which is really you can think about as a psychological coach.
Well, I'm not one of these purists. There are a lot of these coaching schools, so to speak, where people go to coach training and they're so focused on the idea of, how is coaching different from consulting and from mentoring and all that. And they're kind of really focused on certification and the importance of that. I'm really not interested in any of that. My view is that, look, we all need to get out of our own heads, right? And there are a number of ways you can do it. So if you have a mentor, as I see it, a mentor is generally, less formal, somebody that you've come across who's taken an interest in you and willing to, answer questions or give you some guidance here and there. It doesn't always have to be that way because now people are talking about mentoring programs where it's a paid relationship. Again, the terms are getting mixed up. To me, what's most important is that, there's this old Jewish wisdom which says, buy for yourself a friend, right? Purchase for yourself a friend. But we all know you can't buy friends. So what does that mean? And I remember hearing an explanation, which means it's really simply this. Is that, look, a good friend tells you what you need to hear, not necessarily what you want to hear. And if you don't have a good friend who's telling you what you need to hear, then pay somebody to tell you what you need to hear.
I love that.
Yeah, sometimes it's that simple where it's okay. And that could be therapy. That could be life coaching. That could be whatever. Now, another thing is that the way we work, particularly, we're working with coaches, consultants, professional service firm owners, and so on. And what we're taking people through, we're working with them on to get a very specific result. So it's not open-ended coaching, right? Which, in my observation, doesn't usually end on an up. Like if you're kind of meeting with a client week to week, month to month, X number of times a week, there's no end date. My observation is that often kind of just peters out, which doesn't leave anybody feeling really good. From what I've seen and from what we do, and I didn't always do this, but I learned from my own painful experience. So we're really working with people to get to a specific place in a certain period of time. And that's what a lot of coaching is these days. And I think there's a lot of positive to that. That's a good thing. So it's really focused on getting a result. In our case, it's creating a simple, repeatable marketing and selling system to get clients, right? Ideal clients consistently. For other people, it might be something more, personal development related, right? It could be something more about, memory or whatever you guys teach. You don't have coaching, do you?
Well, we have a group coaching program where people buy a bundle of group coaching calls to get on with others. But no, we don't have one-on-one coaching or anything like that. It's something we've considered, but...
Well, look, even group coaching, right, serves the purpose. The purpose is we got to get out of our own heads. And we need to be able to clearly see three things. And I think that whether it's group coaching, whether it's being part of a mastermind of one kind or another, and there are different types, mentoring, whatever it might be, we have got to be clear about really only three things, at least as I see it. I'll tell you what those three things are. You've got to be clear about, number one, what's your destination? Where are you trying to end up? What are you trying to create? And, you'd think that the easiest question for a human being to answer would be, what do you want? Well, it turns out, it seems, it's one of the hardest for most people, right? And that's because, you could say, well, I want to be successful. I want to be that. Okay, now what does that look like and why? And you start to peel off the layers, and then you start to uncover these inner conflicts that we all have where I want this, but I also want that and that and that and that. And I can't really go after all of them. Whether it's a question of what market do I really want to be serving, or like, you say you considered offering certain products and services, but we're all, we've got to work within certain constraints. So the first thing we need to be clear about is, what are you trying to accomplish? What are you trying to create? And I don't think that we need to have a perfect, a crystal clear image. I don't think that's necessary for most of us. But we have to have a direction and certain, a small number of key ideas, that are important. And why? Number two is, looking at that image, that movie, so to speak, of where you want to be, where you want to end up. How do you need to be as a person to naturally fit into that movie?
Right.
Because if we take you as you are today and put you in that movie, it won't work. It's like the wrong character and the wrong story. It just doesn't fit. Something will be off, and the audience could tell, and it will never happen.
This is so important. Yeah.
So the second question is, how do I need to be as a person to fit into that reality I want to create, so that I'm the one who naturally causes the results that I want to create, right? Because right now we look around and I am being the one who is naturally causing the results that I have today. I need to grow. If I want a different reality, I need to be somebody, more of who I'm meant to be. I need to be the higher version of me, and then I will fit into that picture. I need to get clear. What does that person think differently from me? Right? What are the thoughts that go through that person's head on a daily basis? How are they feeling, and what are they doing differently? You need to get that clear. Again, not crystal clear, because it's not like you sit down and get a perfect image of this. It's something that we have to continuously challenge ourselves and do some journal writing and meditating and reflecting and so on. And over time, it gets clearer. And then the third thing that we need to be clear about is, what is my next small step? What's the next thing I need to do? The next small step. And that's another area where a lot of us get stuck, because, we think, well, the next small step is this, but I don't know what I'll do after that, so I'm not going to even take the step in front of us. Now, when you lay it out like that, obviously it's, kind of silly, but that's what gets us stuck. So if you know what you're trying to create, if you know how you need to be as a person to naturally cause that, and then the next small step, now you take that next small step the way that future version of you would take it. In other words, be that way now, and then you start to create the result that you're looking for. I just really see, birds of a feather flock together. People are drawn to people at their level and a little bit higher, generally, right? Because, that's why people join a group and pay, tens of thousands of dollars to be a member in a group where others like them come together and they can learn from that. And we're challenged, right? We're challenged and pushed forward on all those three levels. You get clear about what you are trying to achieve, not necessarily because you look around and say, I want what that person has, but the conversations and the exposure to other people's thinking and what they've achieved and how they're thinking about what they want and why, that helps refine your own thinking. And you start to see how other people are being, and you realize, I should absorb a certain aspect of that because I could be more like that. Again, not because I'm trying to imitate somebody else, but because it helps you see yourself more clearly and what you're capable of. And lastly, what do I do now? The way that future version of me would do it, how do I be that way? Well, having conversations with peers, with coaches, with mentors, whoever is available. And for most people, it's multiples. We really need a little bit of all of that. I'm going to take that next step, fully knowing that I do not have to know how I will take the second step and the third step. I need to focus on the next small step. And, one of the lessons that I've really had to learn, and I'm still learning because I haven't fully mastered this yet, but I'm sure working on it, is let go. Right? None of us really knows what's going to happen. None of us really knows what's going to work all the time. And if you're looking around and you're not taking the next step in front of you today with the clarity and the confidence that you could be taking it because you see somebody else who seems to have it all together, that's an illusion. They might be ahead of you in certain areas. They may have certain things that you can learn from them for sure. But that should never be a reason. If that's a reason why I'm hesitating to take the baby step in front of me, that means I'm being fooled by an illusion. And we have to stop. And I'll just summarize like this and say, so much of what we're looking for when we want to accomplish something is, I must not know enough. When we're making some progress, you hit a wall and we get stuck. And darn it, hit the wall. I must not know enough. We bounce off the wall and we go looking like the Roomba vacuum cleaner, right? You hit the wall, bounces off and goes another direction looking for a chair leg. I must not know enough. I need another book, another course, another program. And then we make some progress and then we hit a wall again and so on. And the pattern keeps repeating. We never get out of the room. What we need is not more information. We need to learn how to think, how to feel, and how to act, how to work. And if we can, instead of always looking for more information, we can learn how to think at a higher level, how to feel, right? Take control of our emotions at a higher level, and then how to work at a higher level. That's the reasons why you'd want to have a coach, be part of mastermind groups, have mentors, and just some good, smart friends who actually care about you.
How do we start? I mean, this is a really hard question, I'm sure, that is weeks or months of coaching, but how do we start to think at that higher level?
I think it has to be simple. It really is simple. It's not always so easy, but it's sitting down and asking, what do I want? It's like, what do I want? And in the coaching work that I do, and I talk to a lot of people about their business and so on, like, what do you want? And they don't tell me what they want. They often tell me what they think they can have.
Yes.
I recognize that because it's a pattern that I also had to learn that. I guess in life, like these lessons that you learn, you think you learn. So when someone says, I never make the same mistake twice, either they're lying or they're lacking self-awareness, because we make the same mistakes again and again and again, just hopefully at a higher level. It's more like a cycle, like a spiral going up, right? So I know that you need to pick a target market and go after them and be focused on it. And I know that if you do that, others around the periphery will also be drawn to what you're doing. They'll recognize it because you're waking up each day and taking action step by step and you're focused on it. I know that. I've broken through that many times in many areas, and yet I find myself in that type of situation because it's a little more advanced. It's a little further along. And I'm going to make that decision. I'm going to get through there as well. But we can't kick ourselves if we find that we're in that same type of situation. It does seem to me that patterns repeat themselves, but we need to make sure we're not making the same mistake at the same level. Does that make sense?
Definitely. And I've also noticed that like a lot of what you said, honestly, Dov, resonated with me because first off, the getting confused between what you want and what you can logically have is a really tough one, right? Because a lot of us, I think, end up dreaming not big enough. I'm doing this all the time in my business. Like, we could reach tens of millions of people and we could impact educational policy and we could 100 different we coulds. But what I end up doing is saying, oh, well, we could grow sales by this much and we can get to this many people. And and it's because it's like, well, what at my current vantage point is realistic, but my current vantage point is nothing compared to where I want to be. And so that really resonated. And the idea of just like, you find the same lessons at the top as you do at the bottom is a super, super important one for people to realize, like the same wisdom. I mean, on the one hand, the level of thinking that got you here won't get you there, but the disciplines and behaviors that got you here will get you there. And I think that that's a really important distinction. Like, I've had to learn not to throw the baby out with the bathwater because yes, this level of thinking that grew me to where I am in my life is not going to take me to the next level. But the behaviors, but the discipline itself, the tenacity, the mental tools are a different thing.
I think I know what you're trying to say, and I'm not sure I have the words, but maybe together we can get it, right?
Yeah.
There's like a meta level, and then there's in the trenches. There's like a process, the overall way of thinking about it, and then there's the content of what you're doing. So yeah, to get to $1 million and then to get to $100 million requires a different level of thinking. But what is the same is that you have to know what you're aiming for. You have to recognize the kind of person you need to be to fit into that $100 million version of you. And you have to be willing to take the next step without being certain of the outcome. You have to be willing to move forward despite the fears, despite the, right? Because maybe now you're not afraid about the $1 million anymore, but the $100 million will certainly scare you. The responsibility required, the risks required are now going to bring in a fear that you haven't felt since you were back at 10,000 and aiming for $1 million, perhaps, right?
Right.
So it's that meta level. I think that's what you're trying to say. But as long as you have that meta level, now you're going to seek out people who are at the level you're aspiring to, whether it's a coach, mentor, mastermind group, and so on.
Right. Absolutely. Dov, tell me some more about your superhuman regimen. I mean, you're running a business. You have, if I remember, 5 kids, 6 kids?
We've got 6 kids, keep us busy.
6 kids keeping you busy. Obviously, you're running this mastermind. How do you keep yourself performing at a high level and keep yourself healthy and happy?
Well, for the most part, I love what I do. So that's a big advantage. I'm really good at what I do. I enjoy it. Obviously, there are parts that I don't enjoy. Not every day is a great day. But, I definitely get up each day and take another stab at it. And I think that's actually really a big thing. It's just to get up every day and keep moving. But when I need clarity, I'll sit down and I'll write in my journal. I read every day. I write a little bit every day just to clear my own head. I have conversations with a colleague, with a coach, and so on. And I think that we all need that. So to me, the superhuman thing, for the most part, is doing the simple things that most people don't do because they think it's too small, they're too insignificant. Mm-hmm. And being willing to allow those little, small, seemingly insignificant things to build up. And before you know it, you're way ahead where the person trying to take that huge step is still at the starting point. A quick analogy, another bit of wisdom, right? It says, another bit of Jewish wisdom I came across is that he who has 100 wants 200, right? And now that sounds, some understand that to be a criticism, right? Well, you already have 100. Why do you want 200? It's kind of, you always want more. Aren't you satisfied with what you have? To me, I think it's a prescription for growth because there's nothing wrong with growing more. First of all, if you want to get from 100 to 200, you have to grow as a person. The thing is that people at 100 don't want 200. They want 1 million, right? So that's the real truth. People at 100 want to get to 1 million. The problem is that if you have 100, now here's how you get to 1 million. Aim for 200. And then you're at 200, aim for 400. And 400, aim for 800, and so on. But if you're at 100 and you want to get to 1 million, and then you're kind of like, how do I get to 1 million? How do I get to 1 million? You're never going to get anywhere. The person who was at 100 went to 2, 4, 6, and so on. They're going to be at 1 million while the other one is still at the starting gate. And I think that's a really important lesson. And it just seems to go against all of our natural wiring. We want to move faster. We want to kind of – I was talking to somebody recently, I don't remember who it was, but there are no shortcuts, right? But there is leverage. There are no shortcuts in terms of making things go faster than they're really naturally able to move. Like you can't rush the corn crop or the wheat crop, I think Stephen Covey used to say, right? You can't rush it.
Right.
You can't make it go faster than it's naturally meant to go. But there are things that you can do to leverage, right? You can learn to, and that's actually, my business is called The Alchemist Entrepreneur. And we, talk about striking at the root where the masses are hacking at the leaves. It's really about, I got the analogy from Paulo Coelho's book, but what I saw in there, I don't know if anyone else saw in there. That's another tangent. I'll try to stay on one thing at a time. But the idea is that can we zero in on what is the few things that make the really big difference? That's where you find leverage. And wisdom is a source of leverage in what we do, in personal performance. Wisdom is a source of leverage, not trying to cram too much into your day in a way that's really impossible to do. If you're running out of fear, if you're reacting to what you're afraid because you're afraid of lack of security and so on, like, oh, I'm gonna have this problem. No, I don't have this, I don't have that, and therefore I need to do this and that. That is a very different mindset from, hey, this is what I'm trying to create. And that's really the question that goes back to the first of the 3 questions. What are we trying to create? And combine that with leverage of wisdom. And that is things that we all know, but we're not living day to day, such as I should focus on what I can control and let go of the things I can't control, such as worrying about what will be tomorrow. It makes no sense, but which of us are not guilty of it? Who can say that it doesn't affect what we do today because we're worried about tomorrow? It makes no logical sense. So the more we can internalize that wisdom, the more we're able to leverage everything we're doing today, and then we go from 1 to 2 to 4 to 8 and so on, whereas the non-superhuman is just being human and giving in to the worry and the stress and not getting clear, not consciously actively reminding himself that he's, what he really wants and how he needs to be and just take that next small step.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. And one of the things that we're interested in working on is, like you said, a coaching and mentorship group where I've never talked about this on the air, and I probably shouldn't talk about it right now because I don't know when we're going to publicize the idea, but essentially a monthly challenge group where we actually go in with people. We invite in the experts and they actually help us not just every week pummel people with content and, every week give them a new assignment, but rather than that, every single month go deep and have community and coaching and consulting to actually implement stuff like improving sleep, meditation, memory improvement, personal finance, stuff like that. So it's an idea. And if people are interested, they can reach out on Twitter and let me know what they think.
Sounds good.
I know we are running out of time here. I want to ask you, what are some of your top books of all time?
Top books of all time. Well, I really enjoyed The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho, which
great book.
A lot of people have read. What that story did for me is, previously I'd imagined, the alchemists of old are these grungy old, greedy old men who are trying to turn lead into gold. Don't know much about it, but that's what I imagined. And what he positions is, and the way I came to see it after reading that book is it's not about these fools who thought I could turn lead into gold. It's about the idea that if you can get to the underlying structure of a situation, then you can leverage it and turn it into something more valuable. And whereas even with today's modern technology, we cannot get to the underlying structure of lead and turn it into gold, as far as I know. Nevertheless, as people, as individuals, as, spouse, husband, wife, employee, whatever role you're at, there is always an underlying structure in a situation. And if you can get past the fog, stop skidding across the surface, being blown sideways through life long enough to learn a little bit about, okay, what are the forces that are really at play here? You can leverage that situation and turn it into gold, turn it into something much more valuable. And that's what the analogy of the alchemist entrepreneur is like. We're not about more and more information. It's really about, okay, what are the few things that make the huge difference? What's the critical 10% that makes you look brilliant 90% of the time that gives you 90% of what you want? So that's what I got from that. I think The Obstacle is the Way, Ryan Holiday's book, is really very good. I think that should be required reading in high schools because, again, we seem to grow up with this idea that it should be easy. And if it's hard, there must be something wrong with me. And it couldn't be further from the truth, So I think that's a really, really good book. And I've also really enjoyed David Nagel's book, The Millions Within. Mm-hmm. And as I said, I'm reading way too many books, so I could. But those are good.
I'm not sure there's such a thing as too many books.
I agree. But, Abraham Lincoln lived in the backwoods of, was it Kentucky at first? I know he was in Illinois eventually. I forget where it was. Anyway, so, and he had to borrow, the 2 or 3 or a handful of books from, the Bible and Pilgrim's Progress and a few other books that he was able to borrow from neighbors. And he read them again and again and again until it affected him, right? Our problem today is we've got so many books between Scribd and Kindle and who knows what, we don't master them. And that's something that we probably all need to work on. So, yeah.
I would agree. Sinking in and going broad are two very different things for different skills.
Yep. And they both have their time and place.
Yeah, they absolutely do. Absolutely. I want to be respectful of your time, Dov, but I do want to give you an opportunity to let people know where they can reach out and learn more about you and your services.
What I'd like to do is give away something that I sold for 5 years for $97 for those for whom it's relevant. So we have a little manual called How to Systematically and Consistently Attract First-Rate Clients, and I sold it for 5 years for $97. We put up a link where your listeners can get it for free at dovgordon.net/superhuman. That's dovgordon.net/superhuman. And they can get at that page.
Awesome. I really appreciate that. And we will put that in the show notes as well in case people are driving. It'll be at Superhuman blog.
I forgot to say the title, right? It's called How to Systematically and Consistently Attract First-Rate Clients. So if someone is not at all looking for clients, it wouldn't be relevant, but that's the title.
Love it. Yeah, that's an important thing for people to know before they go and download it, what exactly they're downloading. It's actually it's a bikini calendar of Dov. We worked it out. We negotiated for weeks to get this for you guys. It's going to be great. It's really wonderful. I've seen some of the photos. They're very, anyway. All right. I'm beating this joke to death. Dov Gordon, I want to thank you so much for your time and sharing your expertise. I really enjoyed the conversation, and I know our audience did as well.
Thank you, Jonathan. I look forward to seeing you again soon.
All right, my friend, let's schedule a hangout either in Jerusalem or in Tel Aviv, but ideally in Tel Aviv.
Okay.
All right, my friend, you take care. All right, Super Friends, that is all we have for you today, but I hope you guys really enjoyed the show, and I hope you learned a ton of actionable information, tips, advice that will help you go out there and overcome the impossible. If you've enjoyed the show, please take a moment to leave us a review on iTunes or Stitcher, or drop us a quick little note on the Twitter machine at GoSuperhuman. Also, if you have any ideas for anyone out there who you would love to see on the show, we always love to hear your recommendations. You can submit on our website, or you can just drop us an email and let us know. That's all for today, guys. Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks for tuning in to the Becoming Superhuman podcast. For more great skills and strategies, or for links to any of the resources mentioned in this episode, visit www.becomingasuperhuman.com/podcast. We'll see you next time.